Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. House Democrats who have viewed the whistleblower complaint against the president say it is disturbing and heightens their concerns. That complaint entails the president's call with the president of Ukraine, a call in which the president urged Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden. That's according to a summary of the conversation that was made available today. The president, who now faces a formal impeachment inquiry, remained defiant today when he addressed the press.
I didn't threaten anybody. In fact, the press was asking questions of the president of Ukraine, and he said no pressure. I used the word pressure. I think he used the word push, but he meant pressure, but it's the same thing. No push, no pressure, no nothing. So
the president calls it a hoax, but Democrats say it amounts to an abuse of power. They point to this paragraph from the summary of the call. President Trump says, quote, "There's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the attorney general would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me." We should note there is an ellipsis in that last sentence that suggests there may be words missing. Lawmakers are now trying to piece together a picture of what happened. We know the president's call coincided with a delay in military aid to Ukraine. While the funding was withheld, Congress learned about the whistleblower. Ukraine ultimately received the aid nearly a month after it was withheld. Democrats are moving full speed ahead. The acting director of national intelligence is scheduled to appear before Congress Thursday as lawmakers try to determine if the president pressured a foreign power into investigating a domestic political rival. Let's bring in our panel now. Olivia Gazis, Rebecca Roiphe, Ben Tracy, and Siobhan Hughes. Olivia is a CBS News intelligence and national security reporter. Rebecca is a CBSN legal contributor and former assistant district attorney. Ben is a CBS News White House correspondent. And Siobhan is a Capitol Hill reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being with us. Ben, let me start with you. President Trump was asked point blank about his justification in the phone call for a sitting president thinking it's okay to talk to a foreign leader about a potential political rival. How did he answer that question?
He answered it really by not answering it. Reporters got in very few questions during this. The president spoke for most of it, but as you mentioned, one of the most direct questions he got is, why was this appropriate? And the president really deflected. He didn't really answer that. And I think the answer that we're seeing in the aggregate from the president over the last couple of days and from the White House is that there was no quid pro quo. So him talking to a foreign leader about a political rival, it seems in the president's mind and in the White House's defense that they think this is okay. So you really do have kind of two different planets revolving here, where you have Democrats and others on one side saying this is really beyond the pale that you would ever think you could call up a foreign leader and discuss a political rival, and the president saying, I did nothing wrong. I think his words were, it was all perfect.
So, Rebecca, let's delve into this idea of quid pro quo a little bit more, since that seems to be at the basis of what, Democrats are looking into and what the president says did not happen. What has to be explicit for that to be clear? And does it need to be explicit for it to still be an impeachable offense?
Okay, well, there are a couple of things. First of all, the standard for impeachable offense is not a crime. It's its own standard, and it really is an abuse of power. So it's important to keep that in mind, because abuse of power can be conceived in lots of different ways. It definitely does not have to be an explicit quid pro quo. But in terms of federal statutes, there are a number of them that deal with this sort of public corruption. And the bribery statute, for instance, makes it illegal to demand something of personal value in exchange for an official act. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about quid pro quo. Did he actually say, I'm going to give you this money if you do this for me, investigate the Bidens? Now, in that telephone call, there is no explicit exchange in that way. But prosecutors prosecute bribery cases all the time without an explicit promise, because most people don't threaten people in that way. I mean, if you think about it, if a mafia boss goes into somebody's restaurant and says, ooh, nice restaurant here, it'd be a real shame if this got torn up.
Right.
That's the kind of way people talk. And so
it can be interpreted, right? Because there was a flow in the conversations that started with, we've done a lot for you, more than Europe. You haven't done so much for us. I'd like to ask you a favor.
Right, and important fact that you would emphasize if you were in a trial, for instance, is how quickly on the tail of that, the discussion of both the Bidens and Hillary's emails or the DNC hack were on the heels of it, because everything's context, and juries convict all the time for bribery cases without an explicit promise. You know, for instance, here in New York, the Sheldon Silver case, there certainly wasn't a clear exchange. Most cases there aren't. So this was circumstantial evidence, and I wouldn't go into a courtroom with just this, but I think it is definitely not exonerating the president.
Right. All right. So, Siobhan, can you walk us through then how we can expect this formal impeachment inquiry process to work? I mean, numerous House committees were already investigating the president. So will these committees continue with their probes by folding in this new Ukraine piece, or will the focus now solely be on Ukraine?
Well, the committees will continue with their probes, and the way it works is that the 6 relevant committee chairmen are getting together as a group repeatedly. They had a meeting today to figure out what could potentially go into articles of impeachment and what would not. It's not clear when that final decision will be made. Democrats say they want to move expeditiously, but also comprehensively. You point out the issue involving the Ukraine call. That's an aspect of the whistleblower complaint. There's a debate right now about whether to focus solely on that or whether to focus on a broader set of facts. Once everybody comes up with a decision, all of that will get funneled to the House Judiciary Committee, which will ball everything together, and then, should it conclude that's the right decision, draft articles of impeachment.
And Siobhan, do we know which committee chair will be leading the push? I'm sure there must be a lot of enthusiasm to be that leader.
So nominally, that is Jerry Nadler as the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. That is the committee in which the impeachment powers are vested and have traditionally been handled. However, look for committee chairman Adam Schiff also to play a very significant role. His committee was the one that was notified of the whistleblower complaint. That's what has sparked the brouhaha, this moment that we are now in. He's also a former prosecutor and someone who is already starting to articulate the abuse of power case that your legal analyst just mentioned, laying out how there does not need to be a specific quid pro quo in order for there to be an abuse of power. And of course, abuse of power is one of the basically 3 buckets that are grounds for impeachment.
Right. All right, Olivia, the acting director of national intelligence, Joseph Maguire, is expected to testify tomorrow. We know that initially he did not want the whistleblower's complaint to be released. We understand that it has now been released. It's in Congress's hands as we speak. We don't know what's in it, but we understand that they are perusing it. What can we expect to come out of tomorrow's testimony, and can we expect the whistleblower to testify?
2 good questions. I think the acting director of national intelligence has set up quite the showdown for tomorrow. He's uncharacteristically released 2 statements in the past 2 days, one indicating that he has followed the law at every step of the way, saying he's a career professional, he's not being influenced by the politics of this moment, and one today denying a report that he had ever considered resigning. So I think that we can expect that he's going to stick up for himself a little bit, but the committee is definitely going to press him on this rationale that he is using to deny congressional intelligence committees from looking at this complaint. We know that the DNI's office consulted with the Department of Justice. There was an opinion from the Office of Legal Counsel released today that detailed their thinking as to why this didn't belong in the Director of National Intelligence's lane. So I think they're going to really ask him, why did he think it was appropriate to engage with DOJ on this? Who was involved in those conversations? What did the White House have to say? What kind of pressure is he under from each of those entities to make the decisions that he has made? So I think all of those things will be on display tomorrow.
Because his office and the DOJ concluded that this whistleblower's complaint did not reach the level of urgent concern. Is that correct?
Yes, there's an element of the definition, the statutory definition of urgent concern, specifically that this didn't involve a member of the intelligence community and it didn't involve an ongoing intelligence activity that led DOJ and apparently gained the agreement of the DNI to not deem it an urgent concern.
And that justifies them withholding it from Congress.
That they argue justifies them in, yes, not immediately giving it over to Congress. Of course, the Inspector General here disagrees and thinks it should have been transmitted long ago.
Right. Rebecca, from a legal perspective, I mean, I know there is some jockeying as to who has seniority here or who has the final word, but it does seem to be a little bit of a showdown. It seems to be setting up between the DOJ and the DNI and the Inspector General and these congressional committees. So who in the end has precedence?
I mean, it's a really good question. The statutory scheme makes it look as if the Inspector General is the final word, and after the Inspector General concludes this is of an urgent concern, it gets passed on. But in a broader governmental way, the Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel does have the final word on what counts on the interpretation of the law. So it's hard to say exactly here, what the proper mechanism was.
Right. We're all sort of learning as we go here.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
So, Ben, the president tried to tie this to the election during that news conference we just heard. How does the Trump campaign plan to use impeachment moving forward?
Well, we've already seen them use it in terms of fundraising. They sent out some fundraising appeals basically saying, the Democrats are attacking the president. They're going to try to remove him from office. We need your support. So that's one way. But I think you heard in this news conference President Trump really kind of unveiling what his line will be. It's if you can't beat me, impeach me. And you can almost hear that at a rally. This is certainly going to be something that the president will be talking about a lot at his rallies, a way to literally rally his base behind him. We're hearing still a lot of bravado from the White House, them saying this really isn't a big deal. There's no there, this is all politics. We'll see where that goes, because I think one thing that we need to keep in mind is this is not all just about this phone call. This whistleblower complaint apparently involves more than just this call with Ukraine. Now, we don't know if the other allegations in the whistleblower complaint are significant or if they're credible. But we'll have to see when all that information comes out. I think we're all focusing on this call today because obviously that's the transcript we have.
Right.
But we should kind of back up and realize that there could be more to this than we know at this point.
Well, getting back to the call, Olivia, I think a lot of people were surprised that it had as much in it as it did, because people saw the president's willingness to release it as sort of a sign that it was probably going to be completely benign, which it is not. In fact, the attorney general is mentioned, I think 4 times the president dangles the attorney general in this phone call. So what more do we know about that? Has there been any response from the attorney general? How can we expect the Intelligence Committee to utilize that information?
Right. You're right. I think we did count up 4 times that the president said, I'm going to connect you to the president of Ukraine. I'm going to connect you with my attorney general and my lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. And, we would love for you to discuss a variety of things. It ranged from the Bidens to CrowdStrike. We heard a lot of favors being solicited by the president, or at least read about them in this call summary. The Department of Justice very strongly denied that the Attorney General was involved in that at all, that the president spoke to him about it. They issued a statement alongside releasing all of these materials saying, we haven't been asked, we haven't engaged with Ukraine on anything, we haven't investigated Biden on anything. But I think that's something that the committee is also going to probe tomorrow, because you've got the president saying, in this call, I'm going to connect you, and then you've just got a denial. So they're going to press, I think, the DNI on just how involved he may have been.
And also going forward, will the Attorney General, will William Barr have to recuse himself for any decisions that may be made over this call or any of this investigation going forward?
Yeah, arguably he should have already actually appointed a special counsel, because he already determined, based on the transcript of the call, that there was no violation of the campaign finance laws. And arguably that's exactly the kind of thing where we don't want the politically responsive attorney general to be deciding. We want a special counsel who's somewhat insulated from that political concern.
Right.
So that
may happen. We may see that in the days ahead. But let me also ask you about Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal lawyer who does not have a government position.
Yes.
He is a private citizen. What is the implication of him being dangled in that phone call?
Right. So there are a couple of important things. So one of the things that adds to the sense that this is both an abuse of power and possibly criminal is the fact that, or the concern that the president is soliciting something of personal value. He keeps claiming, I'm just doing foreign policy like I'm supposed to, right? Ukraine is known for corruption. I'm just talking to them about going after corruption. That's how he's claiming this is all above board.
Right.
That becomes a much more difficult claim when you're sending your personal attorney, because it doesn't look like that is official governmental business. Now, of course, Giuliani has now claimed that he was blessed by the State Department, but I still think that fact is a hard one. Why are you sending Rudy Giuliani, your personal attorney and a private citizen, to do if it's really foreign policy, why are you sending him in there?
Right.
It may even be, if it wasn't blessed by the State Department, a Logan Act violation, because you're not actually allowed as a private citizen to conduct foreign policy on behalf of the United States.
Another complicating factor right there, Siobhan. I want to discuss this idea, though, of congressional oversight. From lawmakers you've been speaking to, how much of this inquiry has to do with their constitutional requirement to be a check on the executive branch?
So the Democrats in Congress are absolutely mindful of their role, their job as a check and balance on the White House. It's a fundamental feature of the Republic, and this is a moment when Democrats are thinking very hard about the fundamentals, the foundational elements of this country. So absolutely, that's central.
So, Olivia, let's talk a little bit about the implications that we've heard that the complaint, this whistleblower complaint, goes beyond the Ukraine phone call. We don't know more than that, though, correct? So if there is something that is more damning that comes out of this whistleblower complaint, how is the White House likely to spin that?
Oh, I think you saw the president do that a little bit already by impugning the character of this whistleblower. He sort of dismissed the information contained in the complaint as secondhand, I think was the word he used. He said some more information was going to come out about this person. But I think it's worth stressing that, again, the Inspector General deemed this to be a credible complaint. And the DNI agrees, it's just that he didn't deem it to be in his lane.
Right.
Of course, I'm sure that both sides of both committees are scouring the contents of the complaint right now, and will be armed with questions for that conversation tomorrow.
Now, the conversation tomorrow, I'm still sort of fascinated by this because a series of letters were released last night. First, from the attorney of the whistleblower, who said, my client wants to testify. It was sent to the office of the DNI, saying, my client wants to testify before Congress. We want to do this the proper way. Please advise. But CCing Adam Schiff's committee, and the office of the DNI responded by saying, we hear you, hold tight, don't do anything yet, we will get back to you. And meanwhile, Adam Schiff responds to that letter saying, come on Thursday, we'd love to hear what you have to say, we will protect you, everything will be fine. What a dizzying, array of events. From reading those letters, what do you predict is going to happen tomorrow with the whistleblower?
I have no idea what's going to happen with the whistleblower, but I will say it's very significant that this individual is willing to risk significant personal harm in order to testify and get information out there, but in accord with the law.
Right.
So I think all of those things are significant. It's somebody who's trying to comply with the law, but somebody who's willing to risk personal harm. And that says something about what this person believes about his or her allegations. Yeah.
All right. Now, I just want to point out moments ago, Congressman Eric Swalwell spoke after viewing the whistleblower complaint. Let's listen.
He did the right thing, and now it's time for the DNI to do the right thing.
Mr. Swalwell, what's your impression out of this, reviewing this complaint?
So the materials I saw today, only, I would say, corroborate, the concerns that this is credible and urgent, and that we need to see the full IG report. We did not get that today.
How long was this complaint?
I'm not going to go into that. Mr. Schiff, I think, will characterize that, when he, addresses the press. But tomorrow the DNI is still coming in, and we're going to insist that we get, everything.
Was this about the phone call?
He's not even allowing. The DNI is not allowing us to even characterize that right now.
But the DNI was down there. Are you talking?
No. We reviewed materials just now. Yeah, but he is still blocking us from characterizing what this even relates to. I'll just say what it relates to is serious, urgent, credible, and we should hear from the whistleblower. And he he should release the whistleblower to come speak to us.
Does this change, do you think, your approach on dealing with this impeachment inquiry?
It heightens our concern, and it also gave us new leads, new witnesses, new materials to follow and pursue. So I got to get to the vote. Yep. Again, I'll let Mr. Schiff characterize, that part of it. I know he'll make a statement soon. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Congressman.
So, Siobhan, that was a very tantalizing tease as to what may be in this whistleblower's complaint that some lawmakers were able to read, but apparently were not allowed to characterize, according to the Director of National Intelligence, who is not giving them permission to do that. What more can you read into Swalwell's comments from what we just heard?
He also said heightened the concerns. He used that word corroborate, which means are there more people besides the one whistleblower backing up whatever this person had to say? It also, to me at least, heightens the chances of an article of impeachment based specifically on this. I don't see any way around it.
All right. So, Ben, what does this mean then for the president's legislative agenda and getting things done? I mean, clearly he is trying to blame Democrats for their attention on this matter, and he wants to sort of spin it by saying, well, they're not getting down to work. In fact, I'm trying to pass gun legislation, and I'm trying to deal with immigration, and I am speaking with all these foreign leaders, and Democrats don't care about any of that. Is that a politically expedient message right now?
Whether it's expedient or not, I'm not sure, but that is certainly the political message. We're also hearing that from the campaign, that they're basically saying President Trump is working for you and the Democrats are working against President Trump. And you heard the president say the Democrats don't care about our country, they only care about the election. And that's the exact accusation people are making about the president. Oftentimes when he's accused of things, he just turns around and says, no, it's you. And that seems to be what the president is doing here. But if there was any hope of a legislative agenda, that seems to be dead in the water for right now. I mean, the big thing that the president and Republicans were hoping to make some progress on was some form of gun control. It's hard to imagine that those negotiations are going to continue and find some sort of resolution here in the next couple of weeks. And then the president, the big thing that he really wants to pass is the USMCA. And he needs the Democrats in the House. He needs Nancy Pelosi to get that done for him. And today he basically said, as far as I'm concerned, she's no longer the Speaker of the House. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how you bridge that gap and get people in a room and hammer those deals out.
All right, Ben Tracy at the White House, Siobhan Hughes on Capitol Hill, Olivia Gazis and Rebecca Roiphe here on set with me. Thanks to all of you for being with us.